Man, we start with the overreaction of the year, the weekend story. um, Brock Purdy was quoted by a guy saying that he potentially could doesn't know if he'll be back yet this year at any point this year. That's not exactly the quote, but he isn't sure if he'll play in 2023 was the quote, and people just ran with it like it was like the biggest news of all time. He could be out for the year. He's out for the year. But what do you think, Raj? I mean, he went on Yahoo Sport. He went did an interview with Yahoo Sports. Jory Epstein covered everything from his surgery to his excellent year, and then he discussed a number of things about how he's getting mental reps in Kyle's offense, so on and so forth. But the excerpt that was discussed most most aggressively this weekend is said that Purdy is no longer wearing that brace. That remains an early step in recovery. Purdy saying Friday he's, quote, not really sure, honestly, whether he'll play in 2023 as he takes it, quote, one day at a time. Your interpretation of said quotes from Mr. Purdy.
Yeah, no, I think he said the right thing. Honestly, you don't like it's like what Kyle Shanahan said a couple years ago when he says, "I don't know who's going to be alive on Sunday." You can't predict injuries like this with the recovery time frame. Like you, people want like a blanket time frame. They want six. That's what they want. Everybody's hanging on a word of, okay, we got the time frame because remember after the surgery it was 6 to 7 months, and then Kyle says he might be back by week 1, week 4. So people hang on these time frames when you're talking about a rehab recovery, it's just not that concrete sometimes. And I deal with it every day. Some patients heal faster, some patients heal, slower. And every body is different. Every body, and it depends. Every injury is different. You won't really know until he starts throwing how he's going to be feeling with throwing a ball. And he's also a football player. This injury is more common in baseball players. So I feel like that's an issue too. We don't really have a lot of subject matter on the recovery of someone in football with this injury. So like he says, you got to take it day by day. He did mention that he's feeling good. He's feeling like recovery is going well as planned. He has good communication with the doctors. And I think that's what we really have to take away from this. We don't know when he's coming back. He could be back week 1. Like he says, he could miss the season, but he could be back week 1. We don't know. We have to just take it day by day, let the body heal. And the other thing that I liked out of this information was he doesn't have the brace anymore. So there's a lot to unpack from that. Not having the brace is really going to get him to improve his range of motion. And that right there is how he's going to get to the point where he starts throwing, and then you ramp it up from there. So to me, I thought it wasn't that big of a deal. I feel like in my eyes, I was like, okay, that's something I figured, you never know with an injury. If there's a setback, then yeah, he may not be able to throw this season. But we don't know yet because he hasn't even got out there and throw. People are going to panic because they see that small little word of, oh my God, what if Brock Purdy doesn't throw this year? What if he doesn't play? Because they're not sold on Trey Lance and this and that. And now they're freaking out. But honestly, I think he said the right thing. And I think you're right. You can never put a time frame on a recovery of that magnitude.
What we've gotten out of all of this is that we don't know. Mm-hmm. We just don't know. Lynch said it. I mean, Lynch was optimistic, thinking, okay, hey, you know what? He might be able to be back sooner, but he basically said it. He basically said, hey, we don't know. The time frame could be different. It could be shorter, could be longer. And then Shanahan, I thought, kind of laid that out as well. It's like, hey, we don't know if Brock's going to return, at any point this year. I mean, he threw out the possibility. So, it's an injury and you don't know. All you got right now is he's feeling well, and we'll know more in a couple months. He's doing the mental reps. You'll know more in June. By June, when he starts to throw, he'll have a much better idea of how his elbow's actually responding. And who knows? It could be anything. It could be anything from he never is the same again on one end of the spectrum to he doesn't look any different, on the other end of the spectrum. And we really just don't know. So that just is why this whole offseason is so interesting on so many fronts. But it does remind us that the worst case scenario, that he could not play at all this year, is definitely out there. And, now it sounds like They want a third starting quarterback. So let's pivot from. So I mean, I my whole thing on the Purdy quotes, he's basically just saying, I don't know, taking it one day at a time. And if it's like, you're right, it's a smart thing to do. If he says it's going to be this long, then all of a sudden, well, what happened? If it doesn't work out in that amount of time, are you having setbacks? And it becomes this big drama. So you don't want to put any date out there. And then, lower, you always want to under promise and over deliver, and you don't want to have create expectations where there's none. So if like he comes out and says, hey, honestly, I don't know if I'll even be able to play this year, I think that's, sets the bar so low that, then all of a sudden, you know what, at least people will be pleasantly surprised whenever he plays this year. If not playing this year is a possibility. So I think that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is the 49ers may know that this is a year and a half long deal, and they just don't want to say anything about it because they don't want to hurt their hand in trying to pursue other quarterbacks along the way. They want to be more stealth in the draft. They don't want people to know their urgency. I mean, for all we know, the 49ers could know that Brock's going to be out for the full year and are just wanting to play it this way for their own competitive advantage, trying to get more quarterbacks in the room, competing with the other teams in the league for those quarterbacks. So even that move would be smart. So, it's one of those things where you want to be optimistic that he can play this year, but we don't really know. And there's all kinds of reasons that we don't know. None of them are accidental. They don't want us to know, partly, and partly we aren't going to know a lot until he starts to throw in June. So for that reason, now I think the quarterback discussion becomes so much more interesting as we fast forward into this draft, because now you've got Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, a rehabbing Brock Purdy with no concrete timetable, reports that the 49ers have met not once, but actually 3 times with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the UCLA quarterback. Is that a smokescreen for them liking another quarterback? At this point, I actually would think it probably is. I mean, the fact that, they've had 3 meetings with one quarterback, that almost tells me that they like another quarterback.
Yeah, that's a great statement you just said, because I was talking about this earlier, and I thought of that. I was like, okay, they're just putting all these chips on the table, because what did you just say? The 49ers are in stealth mode. If Brock Purdy doesn't, have the ability to come back this year, they're not going to tell everybody right now. They want to keep that under wraps, right? And again, if he can, and he's sitting there saying, oh, I don't know if I could play this season, the pity card, and then he comes back, everybody's going to be like, oh, what a warrior. He may not have been able to come back. So it's a stealth mode there. But the 49ers have also met with Jake Haener a couple times. So, yeah, DTR, they're giving everybody all the lip service of, yeah, we're meeting with DTR. He snapped a picture on his Instagram yesterday, and it makes everybody look like, okay, is DTR the guy? I mean, it could be. It could very well be. But it also could be a smokescreen for Jake Haener, who they've had interest in. That's another guy they went and looked at, and they were at the pro day. It could be a smokescreen for Jake Haener. So then it comes down to which one of those 2 guys fits their system. Or would Haener be the guy? Would it make more sense to go get him? Would it make more sense to go get DTR? And then you have to look at, John Lynch, Trey, and Kyle Shanahan. Which one do they want? Because back when they were looking at Trey Lance a couple years ago, there was the Mac Jones, there was the, Trey Lance, there was Justin Fields. And then some people were saying, Kyle's guy is so-and-so, but John Lynch likes this guy. So then it comes back down to that whole argument. And I do feel like with them jamming all this news and everybody knows that DTR is the guy, it kind of feels weird to me that we're like, oh, it just seems too obvious. Like 49ers never make it too obvious, in my opinion. Like it could be that this year they're just oblivious. They're not, making any smoke. But I do feel like you're right. You hit something. Like it could be Haener. I don't know.
Well, and it's a really intriguing quarterback draft after the first round. I mean, people always talk about the first round quarterbacks, and and obviously rightfully so, right? Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, these guys, Hendon Hooker to maybe a lesser degree, are just awesome physical talents. I mean, Levis throws missiles. Richardson's one of the greatest combination of size, speed the quarterback position's ever seen. He's 6'4", 245, and hugely fast. Bryce Young is, they say, has anticipatory skills and is really off the charts and his processing ability. He moves exceptionally well. Great athlete at 5'10", about 200 pounds. And then you get C.J. Stroud, who a lot of people feel is the ultimate blue chipper. I mean, he had just everything about him. I mean, his workouts have been incredible. His numbers are incredible. But he didn't do well in the cognitive drill, so who knows? But all these guys are high, are definitely first round prospects. But then you go to that next level, and you mentioned Jake Haener. There's Jake Haener, there's DTR, Tanner McKee's a very mature player. There's a lot of people who have made really compelling arguments to me about Jaron Hall, the BYU kid who's got Brock Purdy same size, but maybe even better athleticism. I mean, he's really, really exciting. And then a lot of people think that guys like Clayton Tune and Max Duggan have big time intangibles, and you could maybe even throw Stetson Bennett in that mix. These are college quarterbacks that maybe have physical limitations, but have all kinds of intangibles. I think it's interesting. I think the one thing that the 49ers, I think, are going to want in this player is they're going to want a player who's potentially ready to play right away. Not that they're going to play him right away, but I think they want guys who can contribute, who's played a lot of football. And DTR's played 5 years at UCLA. I mean, he's really experienced. Jake Haener started at UW and finished at Fresno State. He's played a ton of football. McKee's played a lot. I mean, the Duggan's, finished up at TCU this year, had a huge year. So, I mean, there's some experienced quarterbacks in this draft. The question I would have is, if you're talking about DTR, that you probably got to use one of your top picks on him.
Yeah.
Do you really think the 49ers with, tackle, edge rusher, corner, D-line, all safety needs, do you think they could potentially go quarterback really high in this draft?
Possibly, and that would tell me that, maybe Brock Purdy isn't going to be ready for a little bit more time. So then that can give us a little bit more information on what we're, talking about with the whole Brock Purdy situation. And maybe they're a little bit more, cautious on the situation. So if they do take him in the third, or a quarterback in the third, maybe it tells us a little bit something of, okay, we have to really insulate ourselves. Although I know they have Darnold. But with one thing you said, what I definitely agree with, they need a seasoned rookie. It's hard, I call him like a veteran rookie. It's hard to say that, a rookie is seasoned, but when you come out of college and you've played a lot of games at a big conference, that's, I think, what the 49ers are looking at, especially now after what they saw with Brock Purdy. He played 4 years at a big school, Iowa State, and he seemed like he was a little bit more poised than most rookies in that situation. So, maybe Haener, would be a guy, but you could get him a little later than third. So if they're absolutely dialed in on DTR, then they might have to go for the third round pick. But again, I think that's why they're spending so much time with this guy, because if they're going to go and get this guy, then yes, it has to be a third round pick. So you need to know, if you're committing a third round pick, which essentially is, your highest value picks on a quarterback, that he is the right guy. So I think that's why they're investing so much time. On the other flip side of saying it's a smokescreen is they got to make sure, because this quarterback room has been the topic of 49ers offseason for years and years and years. You got to make sure you get this guy right, because the fan base is going to revolt. If you go get a quarterback in the third round, we're going to be pissed, because you do have Trey Lance, and you did spend money to get Sam Darnold, who's getting paid decent money for a quarterback. But in the grand scheme of things, if you really look at it, the quarterback room for the 49ers, you're not paying him a lot of money. Jalen Hurts, he got paid a lot of money, man. And the 49ers are getting paid for 4 quarterbacks, potentially, maybe $15 million. That's nothing. So in the grand scheme of things, yes, it would be weird to take a quarterback in third round when you have all these quarterbacks. But if you really look at it, they're not spending a lot of money on these quarterbacks. And I think that's what they want to do, is make sure they're paying their quarterbacks on a cheap rookie deal right now, so they can sign everybody else, Nick Bosa, Brandon Ayuk, and everybody else. But could they spend a third round pick on DTR? They could if they absolutely like him, and I think that's why they brought him in 3 times now. But again, there's a lot of other guys. Like you said, McGee, that's another guy I really like that I feel like they can get. And you don't have to spend the 3rd-round pick. So again, they have to do their homework to make sure they absolutely like DTR. If not, there's a lot of other options. I like Duggan too.
Yeah, they're getting a lot of close looks at these quarterbacks. I mean, Hayner was at their facility for the pro day. They were down at on the farm for Tanner McKee's pro day. DTR, 3 meetings with him. It really interesting. And then Jaron Hall, to me, I mean, when I watch his film, I think, wow, this guy's really something else. He's special. He's a special player. Clayton Toon's got all kinds of intangibles. Max Duggan. Look what he did this year at TCU. He's a little, he's 6'1", 207, but he has 4.5 speed. There's just a lot of intriguing quarterbacks, and it's pretty obvious they're going to go for one. Now, will they go for DTR? And if they do, we're talking about a 3rd-round pick. That's interesting. Now,